Well, let's take a look at what is happening in the markets, and we start off with the local bourse, seeing that the local bourse has sunk into the red today. Of course, we have had two really great weeks of green trading there, but seeming that today, ahead of the Fed minutes, of course, those will be released tomorrow night at around 8 p.m. South African time, seeming that there are some jitters there on the equity market, and not even just on the global, on the JSE, but seeming that it is across the border globally. So we are seeing the all share there declining by 1/3%. Those losses largely coming from the resources 10 complex, with a decline of 0.75%, industrial 25 edging lower by more than 0.4%, and the financial 15 relatively flat, just 0.01% above that flat line. Let's take a look at what is happening with markets stateside. And of course, as I mentioned, investors eyeing those Fed minutes from its last meeting, but also still digesting comments coming out of Fed officials. We did have a Fed official, Christopher Waller, saying that he would like to see inflation on a downward trend for several months before the Fed starts thinking about cutting rates. But we are actually seeing a sea of green over there in the US, although very little gains, though. The tech-heavy Nasdaq just 0.03% above the flat line. The S&P 500 ticking up higher by more than 0.1%, and the Dow there with a gain of 0.16%. Let's take a look at what is happening with markets across the Atlantic, and negative sentiment there as well. FTSE 100 0.04% below that flat line. The CAC 40 declining almost 0.7%, and a slump on the DAX of almost 0.25%. Let's take a look at the currency scene and start off with how the rand is doing against some of the major currencies, seeming that there's still a lot of positive sentiment on the rand, really close to that 18 rand level against the US dollar. Hopefully it can break past that at some point. Against the pound at 22 rand 98, and against the euro, the rand standing at 19 rand 62. Let's take a look at what is happening with the other currency pairs, starting off with the euro dollar at 1.08, remaining relatively flat there. Also flat is the pound dollar at 1.27. The yen just above 156 against the US dollar.